Welcome back to another episode of Once Upon a Quantum Leap. This is Paul Madar,
I'm Capucine.
Capucine something, Capucine Chapman. Yes.
I forget to say my last
I say
name.
my
Start
full name
over.
and you just go in,
Start
Capucine,
over.
like
I know.
Madonna or something.
Start over. And I'm also just going to
No, I'm
keep
keeping
saying,
that in
okay,
in the intro. Yeah,
it's
I'm
okay.
calling you out. Yeah. One word star. Yeah.
That's
Okay. Anyway,
anyway.
we have another episode of my favorite topic, which is pyramids. And why do I like pyramids so much? It's because we can see pyramids metaphorically. It's not just cool technology and explore the technology. It's bringing that technology into our own lives, and that's what we want to explore in this episode.
So, Paul, you are the pyramid. I'm the pyramid. Some guy that I know, I'm not going to mention names, but some guy said this. I'm going to quote this person. That person said, pyramids are symbolic of what we do, what we can do personally. There's a personal principle that is in macro form that's still on the planet. It's a giant reminder of whatever we have available to create with and harness energy in our lives. That's a mouthful.
Man, that sounds familiar.
Who do you think said that?
I think I've heard this guy before. Yeah.
I know.
He's full of hooey.
Well, sometimes he
No.
says some things that make a lot of sense. We're going to do our best, our very best to recap Pyramids Part One, Pyramids Part Two, and then we're going to try to put together some Pyramids Part Three into our So What episode. So let's do a recap. You want to start with that, Paul?
Yeah, let's start with that.
Okay.
Where do we start with that? The origins of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in our first episode we really focused on the timeline of humanity, pushing it way back,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is it's very encouraging for me to see archaeological expeditions finding older and older and older stuff about what humans were doing and building. You know, the Göbekli Tepe's and the various tepes in Turkey that push that timeline way back. I love it. I love it. I feel vindicated. um, and we don't quite have in the timeline of humanity in the established academic narrative, we don't quite have the extraterrestrial origins yet. But I have a hunch that's going to start gelling pretty soon. There's just going to be
Right.
a tipping point where the only explanation can be that we come from off-world originally, or that there's a hybrid. We are a hybrid species of an indigenous hominid that was manipulated in some way over several rounds of genetic manipulation.
So by specific star system. So let's talk about the Pleiadians.
Hmm.
That's a star system.
Yeah.
What's the significance of the Pleiadians?
So according to a lot of the intuitive research that we've done and intuitive reports, what we've pieced together is that the Pleiadian system was a source of intelligence and guidance and somewhat participation in the progression of humanity, in the progression like the genetic progression, but also learning and exploration on the planet. Not necessarily in physical form, more like telepathic communication with what was going on in this plane, but more like I guess you'd say maybe angelic presence or light beings would telepathically visit and guide humanity or various individuals. So that's
Were they also referred to as the Xenu?
yeah, yeah. Some sources call them the Xena, but they were more telepathic participation than anything, more guidance, high-minded kind of guidance.
Connected
But
more towards maybe a source, a godly source, if I could say that, or not.
yeah, it's tricky to say God, but
A light source that
maybe
was
like a higher ideal kind
okay.
of source. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Benevolent sort of source.
Okay.
So we've got that guidance system running in the background. But we have other star systems that are, you could think of it like sending emissaries or sending ambassadors to the planet. And we've talked about this in the other episodes as well, in episode one. But that's what's kind of going on with humanity starting long time ago. We're talking hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Mhm.
Is this participation from off world because we just got very interesting on this planet. It was just in the right place, the right zone, the right temperature, the right everything, and it just became very interesting,
And then we talked about the cycles,
right?
origin
The,
cycles that then turned into what we
yeah,
would.
the cycles think of in terms of major catastrophes on the planet. Like each cycle that we talk about was punctuated by a mass destruction, maybe like a wiping out of culture and technology and populations, and then a restart. But the restart becomes a new phase of humanity, a new upgraded, like a 2.0, and then a 3.0, and then a 4.0. So
And
that's
those
we've gone
cycles were
through
referred to as Lemurian.
Lemurian, and then there was a Lemurian Atlantean crossover, and then there was more Atlantean than Lemurian, and then there was then Atlantean Egyptian we talk about. So there was a gradual segue of these land masses where the activity was more prominent and the learning and the participation was a little more prominent in these different land areas, and
Yeah.
it
So,
shifted.
and in part one, we talk about those cycles from those origins of us as beings, if you want to refer to us that way.
Hmm.
Started off in not forms,
Yeah, more ethereal.
more
Uh,
ethereal. And those
yeah,
cycles, as we keep moving, I guess I'm going to use the word forward in time, um, becomes more dense,
yeah,
right? And then
more
now we start
physicalized, right?
physicalized, we start taking on shape and form and
Yeah,
experiencing. We're removing our closeness or our attachment. The attachment's not right. We're removing ourselves,
losing our
losing. That's a good
losing
word.
our connection or our perception, our awareness of our connection with universal forces. Gradually, bit by bit, we start becoming entrapped
Yes.
in this physical playground that we
Mhm.
have here.
Mhm.
It's just kind of a part of there's it's not really a mistake, it's not an error, it's not sin or anything like that. It's just part of the deal. You know, you get into these thick bodies in this thick atmosphere and with this thick substance, and you just start forgetting because of the optical illusion of separateness on this plane. Yet, all the while, we've got these schools and guidance systems in the background. So, going from the Palladian guidance system to actual schools and schools of thought and philosophies and teachings that are always available on the planet in some form throughout the entire time we've been coming here.
Yeah, I'm just going to do a quick example of one of the Atlantean reports, excuse me, where a person was right in between that Lemurian and Egyptian timeline.
Hmm.
So this one experienced love and bliss in the Lemurian without a lot of attachment to the physical form, but then moves into this Egyptian time where there's more density, but is still very much engrossed in this idea of love, but now with some identity attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this person went on to experience love and intuition through this Egyptian life. So this is an example of a person who moving through time in different life iterations was close to this idea, I think, from that the Pleiadians bring about is this quality of staying connected to something radiant and
Yeah, pure and
pure, but then
mhm,
moves through, still has the echoes or the memories of that and wants to hold on to it, but is experiencing more things because the body is much more formed than it used to be.
mhm.
So that's you're right. That's one example. And then I'm going to go into another one, which is that fourth cycle of Atlantis that's also moving into the Egyptian timeline, where this particular person moving through time um, was part of human sacrifice. So we've all have stories
Oh
about
yeah.
human sacrifice, but this one was connected to fire. So this person's pre said, yeah, we're going into this time period to show more about this devotion to fire and sacrifice. And this person was part of a group that they revered this practice. So this person had a lot
Mhm.
of those teachings that you're referring to. This
Yeah.
person learned how to astral project, how to have some sacredness around this duty of leaving the body for the purpose of sacrificing it. So it's so many things that this person learned during that time period. Then after leaving the body, doing this person's duty um, for the sake of their group, left the body before it became enraged in fire, but then still continued this person's duty in the form of a geometric form in not being a physical body anymore. So it's
Mm.
out in the universe
Mhm.
as a geometric form for these people to continue to revere and pray to.
Wow. Yeah,
So
I remember that
there's
one too.
right
Yeah.
there's something there about um, these cycles where us as individuals have some of us are very attuned to keeping some of these teachings, but the more we keep moving forward, we're challenged with some of these practices. And some of
Yeah.
those teachings are still there, and some of them are now starting to, there's
Well, the uh,
negative
uh,
things that are starting to come into play.
and the natural progression of teachings is to become religion and then dogma and then ritual, um, and then empty ritual. That's kind of a natural progression that we see over and over around the world. It'll start with something really pure and high-minded, and then eventually, through centuries and centuries of practice, the people very often will lose the original intention or the original connection that it was meant to sustain, and it'll become this rote ritualistic, just chanting these things, chanting these prayers, and hoping and maybe believing instead of that knowing that you can have from a spiritual experience. You're
Mhm.
hoping to have a spiritual experience instead.
Yeah.
So that very often typically happens. And then there's the arrival of a new system that comes in that is direct experience related and oriented. And then people have these direct spiritual experiences again, and there's a new guidance system that's
Mhm.
established on the planet
Right.
variously.
So currently, like we can all look in our own time period and say, well, what are some of the practices in, let's say, India or China or
Hmm. Persia or
Persia,
in
anywhere, right?
Africa or in, yeah.
So
Hmm.
there are some groups that still hold on to some of those teachings, and some of those teachings are, I I believe, some of them meant to be still in their purest form, but some of
Yeah.
them have still been um, humanized,
Ritualized or humanized.
ritualized,
Yeah.
humanized.
Right.
There's some good things about that.
Yeah.
But again,
And
it's
there are wisdom keepers within,
mhm,
a sect or a system that might appear to be sort of, lost its punch, lost its connection, but there's still some secret keepers within that tradition that
mhm,
really know what's going on.
right. So that's been part of our story
Yeah.
throughout time as we move
Yep.
through cycles and then we go into timeline of what we as humans have been told. Here's our current timeline of what we know of history. But that search for the connection, the wanting to move back to the connection, and at the same time still engrossed in living life and this body and everything else that we have.
Yeah.
It's been our little model. It's been our
Or
model
yeah.
for some time.
Yeah. And
However,
however,
right, let's go into pyramids part two. Paul throws a curveball at us to give us something else to think about the technology and
yeah.
how this relates specifically to the pyramids, but how it also relates to this evolution that we're talking about.
Well, we have these mysterious pyramids, not just in Egypt. And, when I say pyramid plasma power or pyramids, I do have in mind, I must say, I have in mind the Great Pyramid because it's a great example of technology that we can explore and have explored. But we also see pyramids all over the planet. I mean, look up a map of where pyramids have been discovered, and you see dots all over the planet, everywhere. And we also know that some are submerged completely underwater in the oceans, in Pacific Ocean, in Atlantic Ocean. So there's even rumors of pyramids on Antarctica as well. So we have this technology that apparently was worldwide at some point, whether it was primitive, just, hey, let's build this mound and in a pyramid shape. It just happens to be in a pyramid shape. No, you look inside of these things and you see obviously very advanced technology. You see shafts and corridors and holding tanks and chambers and I can't remember his name, but the guy who does The Land of Chem, he's written this book about explaining that a lot of these pyramids have traces of very particular chemicals fixed into their stone that you can find out what chemicals they were making and building and processing in these pyramids. And then you've got the legends and the intuitive reports of the Great Pyramid, especially having a capstone of crystal on top, not the gold that everybody just figures, well, they were into gold, so it was probably gold at the top. Apparently, it was a crystal of a very unique shape that could translate the the differential of the electric charge of the ionosphere into and channel and translate this charge into usable power, whether it was processing chemicals or whether it was splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen with electrolysis, or whether it was doing some kind of combustion in the king's chamber. There's various ideas of what might have been going on, but it's pretty unanimous among the people who really look at this and examine the evidence. They say this was a power plant of some sort,
Yeah.
this Great Pyramid. And therefore, by extrapolation, these other pyramids were some kind of power plant or preparation plant, gathering various and refining various things, elements, gases, chemicals. So we've got this giant pyramid that's then processing electricity, channeling this electricity, creating this plasmic based technology, and being able to somehow transmit this power at a distance. We haven't quite rediscovered how to do that. Scientists, physicists say, well, it's kind of possible. I think physicists have kind of given up on cold fusion. Like fusion theoretically is possible, but there's no way that we can actually do cold fusion on this planet. And a plasmic reactor on this planet, no, that operates at what, like 40,000 degrees or something, something ridiculous like that. Of course,
Mhm.
we're not doing that. So, but there was some kind of technology that was going on that my proposal in the last episode was that they were channeling and creating a plasmic field, and then within that plasmic field, you can introduce coherent standing waves, and those coherent standing waves can then be used to counteract gravity and just all kinds of really cool principles that you can engage, send power at a distance, receive power from these plants like thousands of miles away. If you have a matching crystalline setup, kind of like crystal radio was back in the day, the 20s and 30s and even 40s, you had crystals transmitting vibration to each other in radios. That was a thing. And so it looks like that's what was going on with this technology.
Well, I'm going to pause there for a bit because that's a lot of wow. Even when I still hear how we talked about it in Pyramids Part Two, the question that still lingers is: so did how did we lose our technology privileges? Did we lose our technology privileges that you just described?
Hmm.
And maybe that part leads into so what? So what that back in the day it was possible that we had this great form of technology and we had access to it. And now we're struggling
Yeah.
to try to get back to that place. So what? I mean, why did
Yeah.
we lose it? What's
What happened? Yeah.
yeah, if we had it one time, why don't we have it now? Or do we have it now? We're just
Yeah.
not using it. So
Why didn't they write it down or store it in a time capsule or something like
yeah.
that?
Yeah, so let's weave this all together for everybody here. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts here?
Well, those cycles, the cycle idea that we explored in part one was that every cycle culminates in some kind of cataclysm, some kind of pretty broad catastrophe that happens to the planet. And whether it's an asteroid impact or it's meteor explosions that decimate whole areas, or it's a giant flood, and in the case of pyramid technology, we had the flood that that wiped out much of that area, much of the Mediterranean area. And it was triggered by Atlantis, the last of the Atlantean islands, sinking. They went down, they pushed the water up, of course, with displacement, and the water just poured across the Sahara Desert, raising the Mediterranean, flooding all of those surrounding areas for quite a while. You can think of the Younger Dryas impact theory and look that up, and that shows how and where the water came from and why the oceans rose. But we also have the Atlantean portion of that pushing the water up. And we have lots and lots and lots of intuitive reports that detail what was going on in Atlantis and on Atlantis and before, during, and after the catastrophe. We have reports of the catastrophe happening and people losing their lives or being injured and then limping along afterwards. And just, it was a mess for a long time because of that last catastrophe. And that's where we get these legends of the Great Flood lingering and that catastrophe. And that's essentially where we lost our technology, which just wiped things out.
When you say we lost our technology, you're talking about lost our technology
We lost the people who knew
physically,
how to
lost the
do it.
people. Okay,
Yeah,
that's what you mean by
wasn't
that.
written down, wasn't engraved in the hieroglyphics because they didn't even have those at that point.
Okay.
And um, at the same time, the evolutionary step that we talk about with the cycles of humanity, the evolutionary step was that we were becoming more engrossed in the physical consciousness, in the physical world of this earth. And that also led to us just losing our connection with consciousness with bigger, deeper, broader parts of our consciousness. So we became these limited little beings that didn't even believe in a greater power system
So
or
let's
this
can we
technology.
let's pause again. Let's talk a little bit about losing that connection. How would you describe that?
Ooh, that's a good question. Losing your connection. Um, it could be okay. So here's an analogy. You wake up in the morning and you had a really interesting dream, and you're kind of lying there and you're thinking about this dream, and you see the images of this dream and you feel like it was real, and you start wondering, where is this dream world? And all of a sudden your cat knocks over a vase just outside your door, and you jerk yourself out of that reverie state and you run outside and you scold the cat. You got to sweep up the mess. There's stuff everywhere, there's dirt everywhere. And you have now just contracted your awareness into this very localized situation here. Instead of it being this broad, expansive, wonderful
Mhm.
exploration of the dreamscape and the dream world, you're now sweeping stuff off a floor, and that's your world right
And then
there.
you've got to feed yourself, and then maybe you
Yeah,
got
and then you go, well, I guess I gotta shave and I gotta go make some breakfast, and oh shoot, I got that appointment that I
right.
gotta get to, and I gotta make sure that I print this stuff out, and the
Or
concerns of the world just kind of
yeah.
take over,
Okay.
and
Okay.
you forget to go back to that expanded awareness.
And because time has gone by, a lot of time because of these great eruptions in the world
Yeah.
has gone by. So it's not like we just woke up and we forgot.
Yeah, it's
It's
not an overnight thing. It's more like a habit of
Mhm.
a contraction of your awareness and of your consciousness. We just kind of get stuck in that
Mhm.
smallness of thinking we're these little beings walking around on a planet.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a
So,
habit more
so
than
for a
anything.
larger group of people, that becomes more and more the norm.
Right. Then you talk to your neighbor about your experiences and they agree with you. And then little bit by little bit, there's a culture that develops, a culture of this is how things are, this is what I've experienced. And that culture becomes established and supported and self-supporting until there's a catastrophe that wipes it all out. You got a clean slate. There's the opportunity for a new paradigm.
There was another intuitive report. Actually, this was on mine from trying to remember the time period now, but it was where there was a division of two groups, where one of the groups was um, very much trying to hold on to the sacred ways, the teachings,
Yeah.
being the connected. And then another part of the group was, no, that's old stuff. We don't need to practice that anymore.
Hmm.
And there was already a division of a same group, but two parts of the group were trying to hold on to ways of teaching, and the other group was like, nah, that's old. We can't believe that.
Yeah.
And so that was occurring. That was a time period where some people were holding on and some people were not,
Yeah.
or
Thinking
forgot,
we've got to do
remembered.
progress and we've got to be modern and
Yeah.
modernize and get with the times. And
And that's
yeah.
old stuff. We don't need to believe that
Yeah.
anymore.
I mean, why does it have to be one or the other? Why can't you have both? I mean,
Yeah.
you could have the old traditions and you can have the keepers of the wisdom and you can have some modern stuff and you can mesh the two. Why not? Why not mesh the two together?
But to your point, that's what was occurring during some of our, gosh, what would you say around that time period was if we had to do cycles? That started to occur right around
Hmm.
what?
Maybe 20 to 30,000 years ago, somewhere around there,
Okay.
where
Okay.
it started slipping away, and it became more interesting to participate in the world, the physical world, than it is to stay connected to the non-physical world.
Mhm.
more entrapment. By the time
Oh.
it was, maybe 11,000 BC or so, I would say most people were in this entrapment mode, and that's symbolized by the flood, like the submergence. We talked about the metaphor also of the submergence of Atlantis.
Mhm.
It is buried symbolically under the ocean of conscious life experience.
Yet the other thing that was also occurring was the reasoning started to become a lot more prominent. Like,
Hmm.
hey, what can we create? We need to develop some things
Yeah,
to help
let's
make
play
our
with that
lives a
for a
little bit
while.
easier.
Yeah.
So that was part of our evolution, where reasoning and creating and experimenting. So
Hmm.
part of our history tells us that um, we were still trying to figure things out, even if maybe we were not connected to a source or a higher purity of this technology. Let's
Yeah.
refer to it that way.
Yeah. So maybe we lost our technology, but we've still got opportunities we still got these schools that are around, the mystery schools and the mystery teachings. The esoteric teachings are still around. So the guidance system, and most likely we're still being visited by the Pleiadians, although we've become dense by then, and it's hard for them to get through and make contact and telepathic guidance. We're
Okay,
just,
so you said something there. Visited by the Palladians. So are we visited by them? Are we not them? Have we not bred with them? There's breeding. What do you mean by that?
from the reports that we've had, it sounds like the Pleiadians didn't really incarnate very much, not very often, and not for very long, if they did. It was more this internal guidance, mental, emotional, and telepathic guidance, suggestions. Maybe inventions are inspired by a Pleiadian influence that help humanity keep on progressing. But you have other uh, star systems that are visiting, and maybe they step up the pace a little bit of their visitations from different systems, like the Centaurian system, or from the Orion system, which was heavily influencing the Atlanteans and then the Egyptian Atlantean mixture civilization. So you've got visitations going on the entire time that
Mhm.
humans have been cooking on this earth here.
Okay,
So
back to
yeah,
this.
we fluctuate with our awareness. We heightened awareness, expanded awareness, and then contracted awareness. And then it seems like we're in a ramp up to expanded awareness now. We're coming out of that the dark ages of humanity and trying to pull up out of this contracted awareness into more expansiveness.
And so the schools that have been that have that are in our history, been around, the intent is to help people remember to keep their awareness open.
Hmm.
Those type of schools teach things like harnessing your mind,
Yeah.
concentration, meditation. I, so I guess, let's see, what's the visual that I have here? You have people that are engrossed and entrapped in these practices, these teachings that have been like, we've got to try to keep this alive. But so these teachings are intended to help people open up, keep opening back up so that
Hmm.
they don't stay so constricted. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I still think that the Great Pyramid and all the pyramids all over the world they're still here as reminders of these ages gone by. They're built out of stone, so they're going to stay. Like they're going to live through a lot of these catastrophes that happen. And they're these reminders of keep looking up, keep yourself pointed towards the one the one source. They're kind of like arrows, when you really think about it. Pyramids are like arrows pointing up, pointing towards the sky, pointing towards a higher ideal or a higher consciousness. And they're mysteries for us, so they get us wondering as well. I think it goes even a step farther with these pyramids is that the technology seems to mirror our own physiology as well. So it's a reminder and also an example of how to draw your energies up and include higher energies and combine those energies into a usable power that then is expansive and interconnected with everyone else on the planet. So it's a macro metaphor for what we have available at all times inside of us to
So
invite
what
in
are
a higher power and bring up our lower power.
so we talked about that a little bit earlier. So let's dive into that, Paul. Sound.
Oh yeah, sound. Yeah.
Go for it.
So you think of the traditions around the world, the mystery teachings or the religions or the philosophies, and all of them involve sound, like song or prayer or chanting, toning. All of them have sound as a fundamental element of their rituals and of their practices. Some of them are drumming, some of them are actual toning and singing or chanting together. And there's some more and more research is coming out about the effect of coordinated, cohesive toning and sounding, and what that can do with both your body, like how it can change the physiology of your body. And the example that I just ran across recently was how coordinated sound and toning can coordinate the electric field around a quartz infused stone, like marble, for instance, has a high degree of quartz within it. It's the shiny stuff, that's sprinkled in your quartz countertops.
Mhm.
So we know about the piezoelectric effect of like putting pressure on quartzite material that it drives
Of course we know
electrons.
that. Of course we know that,
Of
Paul.
course we do. Yeah.
The piece of
Everyone learns that. The
slow the roll
wood,
down.
the piezo wood.
Talk a little bit more about
He's
that.
talking about pizza now.
I know.
Yeah. So there's a way that you can essentially squeeze a crystal and you generate electricity.
Okay.
That's this piezoelectric effect. That's what
Okay.
radio was working with.
Okay.
Um, it turns out, apparently, that you can also um, send sound, cohesive, coordinated sound to these crystals or to the stone with high crystalline content. And that will also generate a coordinated electric field and sustain an electric field around the stone. So, my proposal part two, or what am I up to? Part three
We're on
proposal.
part three.
My
Yes.
updated proposal now is if you're generating this plasmic field with this pyramid and you incorporate cohesive thought and toning, you can induce an electric field around a stone, let's say, within this plasmic field that you've created. And that can, I'm losing you here, I can tell.
No,
No?
no, you're
Anybody?
not.
Anybody?
No, no,
It,
no.
you
Go.
can you can warp this time space when you have this coordinated electric field within a plasmic field.
Mhm. Mhm.
That bends time and space just enough that it could induce a gravitational anomaly, like a counter gravitational force.
So
I
this
know
is
physicists listening to this now are just really cringing,
so
going,
I'm going to call upon my artistic background and my friends who love to dance and be with movement. So I'm thinking, as you were saying that, like, have you ever seen a person who is so like totally surrenders themselves to the music, to the sound, and their body is moving in so many different fluid ways? It's a beautiful dance. It's choreographed and yet not choreographed. It's a thought that's melded in with this music, but they've surrendered everything about themselves
hmm,
to move and blend. And it's yet is directed. There's intelligence behind it that's directed.
yeah,
So it's for me, when you're saying that, this is where my mind goes to. It's you explained it in such a wonderful scientific way, but the way I captured it was, well, of course that can happen. Sound and thought is movement. It moves in space and time. It can be directed. Um, and the more in tune you are, it's very purposeful then.
hmm,
So, why can we appreciate it in artistic terms when we see a dancer who does that so eloquently? Why is it that we don't question that
yeah.
when in
And we
reality,
call it beauty, and we
and we,
call it art, and we call it,
that's right.
yeah.
And it's all in this creative realm, which I still think what you're talking about is part of the creative process in the
Hmm,
creative realm. But that's how what you said resonates with me.
yeah, yeah.
It's
I
it.
I see your image of the unification of intelligence meets let's say music in this case meets movement, and all of it is coordinated and
Mhm.
combining at the same time in the same
Right.
place, and that's what we find is magical
Yeah.
and artistic and beautiful.
And why isn't that that could not have occurred when creating a structure such as the pyramid?
Yeah. And maybe it could be as simple as that, as
Right.
singing singing the stones into place. And that's
Mhm.
actually what Edgar Casey talked about when they asked him point blank
Mm.
in his intuitive research. They said, how were the stones moved to build these pyramids? And he said, they were sung into place.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
The singing was
Wow.
what did it. So there's something there. There's something with coordinated sound vibration that hits resonant frequencies, that drives the electrons to the surface, that create this blah, 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 all the physics of that. But they're singing to stone, and
Mhm.
the stones move.
And again, it's a that singing. It's like I could sing right now. You don't want to hear me sing,
Chanting, maybe, but yeah.
but it's goes back to the teachings, the teachers that have stayed around for eons and eons and eons to remind us that there are things that we as humans can do to return back to this technology, which is a source, to then do the next evolutionary thing we are supposed to be doing, which is continue to create using this technology. I
Mm,
believe.
hmm.
I
So
believe.
how does I just had a connection moment from what you were talking about with the dance and the sound and the movement and the singing, and um, so how does our Bible start? In the beginning was the Word, and the
Mm-hmm.
Word was with God, right?
Yes.
So that's that picture of the union of consciousness with word,
Mm-hmm.
with
Sound.
sound, maybe chanted, maybe spoken, but union of consciousness with word. And there's a unity there.
Mm-hmm.
So this episode we're trying to do a so what kind of thing. So I'm
Right.
starting to see that a good so what could be as simple as pay very close attention to your words, the sounds that you make that are joined with consciousness. So when you join intention, consciousness, and you speak, that has power. It has the power to lift stone. So therefore, it has tremendous power in your life. It can move things. It can move people. It can move situations. It can move organizations. It can move countries. The power of the spoken word when there's that nexus of electromagnetics and consciousness, intelligence, intention, and sound.
So if you're doing all of that at once without any of the words you just said, the image I had was of a mother moving her body to pick up a child.
Hmm.
All of that is part of this union that you're talking about. I mean, I am picking up another form. I'm going to move that form closer to me. And I'm doing that because maybe I want to give the baby a hug. I want to soothe the baby.
Hmm.
That's it's a very simplified, I know, but
Yeah.
that is still a technology.
Yeah. It's the union. It's the combination, or as
Right.
Dr. Stephen Greer would say, the nexus of
Mhm.
intelligence
Mhm.
with intention, with cohesive thought, with
Mhm.
the electromagnetic involvement. When those come together, that's when you have the power to disseminate love, or to
Mhm.
connect with love, or to
Mhm.
help another feel loved.
Right. Right. The difference there would be that we do it without being aware that we
Hmm.
are doing that. It's it's oh, I'm going to pick you're not even thinking. I'm just going to
Yeah.
pick up my baby because I do, and then you forget about it. Back to the analogy earlier on in this episode where you say we kind of get engrossed in our time and our days.
Yeah.
Oh, well, now I got to pick up the baby. And, oh, this is what I know to do to soothe the baby. Or this is, if I put a, bottle in the baby,
Yeah.
we start just sometimes we start now going on automatic.
Yeah.
And
It's the awareness
that's
combined
being
with that.
engrossed,
Yeah.
that's being engrossed or entrapped in the body
Yeah.
in this, this technology that we're keeping the technology at bay because we're so used to running on patterns, which we have
Yeah.
spoken about previously. And I think that's a great way of saying, so what? Well, the so what is imagine you have the technology already at your fingertips. And one of the things that you can do right now is to be aware of how your thoughts are connected to this action that you're getting ready to do.
Yeah. Yep. The
So,
junctions, the
right.
the junctions of awareness and action and words and love, when those come together,
Right.
that's where the power is, the transformative power is.
Right. And when that is more synchronized
Hmm.
and more attuned, there's you're probably already activating a sound that's not audible to you.
Yeah.
You're activating this technology that you maybe not even be able to hear it yet, but you're
Yeah.
activating it because you're moving in rhythm with it.
I would throw into that mix imaging as well, and
Mhm.
probably emotions. Like when
Mhm.
your emotions are lined up and you have a strong, solid mental image, and you're combining it with awareness and intentionality, everything lines up. So
Mhm.
maybe this idea of us losing our technology is maybe just it's just we got fractionated,
That's a good way of putting it.
like awareness was not coordinated with action, and the action was not coordinated with word, and the word was not coordinated with, just the pieces. We're still doing the pieces, but they weren't. coming together
Mhm.
in the same nexus. I love that word.
So, what are the commonalities of all of the teachings throughout the world? What are some commonalities that everyone says it's good if
Mm.
you just start doing this,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So all of those
Um,
teachings believe in breath work,
yeah. Um,
um,
Light, I would say, is a common element. Light and love
light and love,
and prayer.
creating a space where you're
Hmm.
quiet or you're being
Calmness also.
calmness. Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, there are some where you get pretty excited and you dance
Right.
around the fire and all of that, but
Sure, sure.
most of the
But
major
it's,
enduring systems, though.
yeah. And it truly, when I like those movement, when you get excited and you move, I still consider that as being part of the stillness.
Yeah.
When you're really connected to something that is just beyond what you can describe and it causes you to move, you're in another movement.
Yeah, the ecstatic dance
Yeah.
effect, or the whirling dervishes, they get into that trance state.
Right.
You, so I think another commonality is a higher state of mind.
Hmm.
Like you'll do the stillness and do the prayer and gestures of love and all of that, but the goal is to notch up, to go within and to some kind of higher state of mind
Right.
is a commonality, an inner state of mind, including the inner.
We were talking earlier. So this time of year, I make my Christmas cards, print them out, send them out to a lot of people. I've been doing that for years. So, but my intention when I started to do it was it's because what you do. It's what I learned growing up Catholic and some niceties, some little traditions. It's what you do. So I wanted to say Merry Christmas, happy, have a good, great new year, all that kind of wonderful
Hmm.
stuff. But the older I got, deeper I wanted to connect to why I was doing that and what I really wanted to say. So it's so fun to see the evolution of my Christmas cards. Again, back to the intention, back to unifying with this idea of giving. And it feels so much different than when I first
Mm.
started. Now, both matter to me. They're both, this is where I was at this time period. This is where I'm at right now. I imagine I'll keep doing this till the day I die. And I can just only imagine that it's going to be even on another level of what it's like. But I think that's also part of our own individual journey of connecting to and being much more aware of what we are giving, what's being expressed from us. And the more you're open to, whether you call it curiosity or whatever, but just the more you're open to being connected to, I'm going to just use the word technology, even though I've used the word source and God before. But the more you are desirous of connecting to and bridging this technology that's has a level of purity to it, it's expansive.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what people yearn for also is that expansive awareness, that expansive feeling that comes when you are using the technology well and
Mhm.
things come together and you've got this alignment and it's that expansiveness and the lifting feeling
Mhm.
can be self-sustaining as well.
Yeah. And I think that one can create that with whatever creative act you are doing on a daily basis. So let's go back to the story when I asked about, so how did we lose a technology? You said, well, you have this dream. You gave the example of having a
Hmm.
dream, really trying to stay with the dream, and then life begins. Then you got to, you know,
Yeah.
go make yourself breakfast and have your day. So I always want to encourage myself, but also other people to expand the dream all the time
Mm.
throughout the entire day. Because think about it, someone's dreaming right now, even though they're in a sleep state on another part of the world. I can still be connected to someone in a dream state that's sleeping. But then we wake up, I'm awake, and so
Hmm.
they're connected to me in a wake up dream state.
Yeah.
So our thoughts can still be connected whether we're awake or we are in a quote sleep state.
Yeah. There's like the connected consciousness, collective consciousness band that is
Yeah.
always present that you can tune into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you really look at it, when you're dreaming, time and space is suspended
Mm-hmm.
temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not, it doesn't really apply in a dream state, time
Yeah.
and space. It's that as we raise our consciousness, time and space is not as thick an influence on our life. Time and space doesn't matter as much. And then when we get contracted down into this physical realm, time and space is everything. You know, time is money
That's
and
that's right.
distance is, oh my gosh, I have to drive across Kansas again. Oh my gosh. Sorry,
And
Kansas,
it
but yeah.
sorry, and it's memory. It's like, oh my God, that's happened yesterday, and I'm still thinking about it. And or that
Yeah.
awful thing I said or someone said to me that happened three days ago, and I'm still holding on to that. Or
Right.
then memory plays an unproductive use of memory starts wreaking havoc on you and keeps you tethered even more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's all these little things that that we've done to continue to keep ourselves in this place.
And trapped. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's why I think the pyramids are great reminders sprinkled all over the world, reminders to just try to return to that technology, like you're saying, of joining these tools together in a cohesive kind of approach to life so that you have more personal power, but you also have this expanded awareness and consciousness, and you can inspire others to lift up a little bit higher in their consciousness and awareness as well. So we can get on with the open contact with extraterrestrial beings instead of hidden contact all the time.
So I opened up this conversation with a quote from my dear friend Paul. I'm going to read it again to you, Paul.
Uh-huh.
So listen carefully. But this time I want you to say thumbs up. I don't need to add anything to that. Or even after our conversation, you can say, maybe I do want to add something.
Hmm.
Ready?
Okay.
Brace yourself here. Here we go. Pyramids are symbolic of what we do, what we can do personally. There's a personal principle that is in macro form still on the planet. It's a giant reminder of what we have available to create with and harness energy in our lives.
Yeah. Wow. That's kind of what we talked about.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Is trying so hard as a human species to remember what is available for us to use, the tools that we have, the internal tools, the power tools that we have, and harness the energy in our lives. The one thing I would add to that is my particular life's focus, which is the element of focused attention. And when we focus our attention, we have access to these powers. And I think that's what the pyramids do is remind us to focus our energies, focus our attention so that we have access to this personal power. For some people, the attention is like wild horses that you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to tame. For some people, it's kind of like a cat that has a mind of its own, is going to do
Mm-hmm.
its own thing.
Yeah.
And for some people, it's like a turtle, where you just got to try to get it to move and it just won't move.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever your experience of your attention is, just, yeah, that would be my suggestion is see if
It's
you can
good.
just make
Good.
it a little bit a little bit more focused, maybe, or hold stillness a little bit longer and see what happens, or
Yeah.
experiment with your attention. Get to know it. Get to know
Get to
your
know
animal.
it.
Your
Get to know it.
yeah.
That's a good one. All right. Well, we did our best to do the so what part. We did our best, right, Paul?
There you go. Once Upon a Quantum Leap is for your reference only. This podcast and the material is intended solely as educational information and should not be used for diagnosis or treatment of any health problem, financial, or legal advice.
You can listen to full episodes and find out about Paul and Capucine at onceuponaquantumleap.com. All reports shared on this show have been released with permission, and identifiers have been removed for individuals' privacy.
The intuitive reports referred to in each episode are available on our website, on the podcast page, and through links in our show notes. We encourage you to listen to those for greater context.
If you're interested in obtaining your own intuitive report, go to quantuminsight.co. That's quantuminsight.co. You can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.